Good morning. And I also want to thank the organizers for doing this. Um, and because it takes a lot of work to bring this like live sessions across the world in 5 different tracks. So I know we lost some time. So I think I was told I have 50 minutes. So I'll go very quick and see how far we can manage. So I'm not going to read my bio, but you can take note of my contacts on the left side. So after this presentation, if you have any question, comments, you can always reach out to me. And we also want to thank the partners to help us to bring this session live here. So if you have any question, you put in the chat. I really cannot see the chat. So the moderators will stop me and read out to me. It's better to hold on till we go to the demo because as I'll be doing live demo to Azure, so there'll be some pause and it'll be good to answer those questions at that time. So why would you be listening to this talk? So this is a real life example that happened in one of the UK region. Some of the resources were down for over 16 hours, and this is from 2019. But I also looked at, if you go to this URL, you can filter by resources, and you see these are some of the outages that happen around Azure SQL database. And the question you need to ask is, can my business afford to, lose databases or connection to the databases for this kind of time? And if the answer is yes, maybe you do not need to do much. There's some built-in HADR capability, built-in backup, which I'll talk about. Maybe those are enough. But if your business cannot sustain this kind of outage, then I'll show you some of the techniques that you can use. So because in the interest of time, I'm going to go through the slides quickly and I'll try to spend some time on the demo to show you live how to do some of these things. But before we even start talking about, setting up some of these solutions that I'm going to show you, you need to know what your business need, right? Um, what's the RPO, RTO that your business need? And this is something I try to tell the, technologies that this is something, it's not our job to decide what's the RPO, RTO. You should, as a team, go to your business owners, go to the system owners, go to the partners, go to your clients and sit down with them and ask them, right, what they want, what they need, how much data they can afford to lose, how long they can be down, do they have other systems that they can use, or whatnot, right? Because this is our job is to talk to them, find out what they need, provide the solutions, provide the options, give them a menu that this is all I can provide you, and implement that. And at the same time, you should also talk about cost. And in the process, you should also talk about ERT, which is this estimated recovery time. What do I mean by that, right? Because you just bring up your database, that's not enough, right? They have other components, they have web servers, they have their apps, and everything else has to work, right? So how long everything else is going to take? And if you have one component that's going to take most of the time, so that should be your RTO, right? Because till that component is up and running, your business is not working. And this is kind of a visual timeline about what do I mean by RPRTO. There's one component that sometimes people don't think about, that a disaster can happen and you might not know. And why, right? Say like if you're a bank, if you're a 9 to 5 shop, 5 o'clock everybody went home, and then you had a deployment at night. Maybe you ran a delete statement or update statement that you didn't have the right predicate, and then you don't know, right, till the bank opens next morning, and you don't get a request that, hey, we have a problem, can you start a recovery? So sometimes you see this orange line, it's a gray area, right? Sometimes you don't know right away, so you have to think about it. So, and when you talk to your business partners, you tell them that the time I need to bring everything up is the time when you request for recovery, not from the time of disaster, because I might not be aware about the disaster at that time. So discuss this. And before you said all this, you want to know What, because we are primarily talking about today Azure SQL database, we are not talking about managed instance or hyperscale or SQL Server and VM. But in Azure SQL database, there is four different things you want to know. You want to know your purchase model, service tier, compute tier, and hardware tier. Why? Because based on the choices you make out of this, you will be restricted with what kind of solutions you can put for HADR. To give you an example, I'll talk about zone redundancy. So if you need zone redundancy, that's only available in Gen 5 hardware. So if you're deploying in M series or DC series, you cannot do zone redundancy. So be careful with that. Um, there's mainly two purchase model, D2 and vCore. I'm not going to go into details. I put an URL. Please read about that. Currently, Microsoft's recommendation is for you to use vCore model, but if you have some older Azure SQL database with D2 model, if that's working for you, that's fine. You don't need to change. But I just want to mention that these are the two main models that they provide. And when you talk about redundancy, you should think about all this. Deployment, right? If you're deploying, if your plan is to always deploy from your code, then you should think about it, right? Like, because you might have a resource that doesn't need all the bells and results. You might say, I'll just deploy it brand new. So you can have a code ready, either ARM template or PowerShell or whatnot. And then Microsoft's data centers, the way they're laid out, they're geographically separated. Within a geography, you can have multiple region. Then within a region, you can have multiple zone. Each zone can have multiple data centers. You should think about all that, what kind of redundancy you need. Now, these are some of the things that we'll be talking about. Now, some of you might be wondering why temporal table is here, right? Is temporal table is really a HADR solution? It's not, but it is at the same time it is. So there are some components in in temporal table that you can use that to recover some of the data in point in time, and that also restricted um, by the tier that you deploy. That's what I said before you deploy. Please look at your tiers, and you want to know about that. And then the other five we will go through and we'll talk about that. Now, before I go into details, this is one of the examples that why you should sit down with your business partners, why you should talk to them, and and fix the RPO RTO with them, just by looking at this, right? If you look at here, as soon as you deploy a Azure SQL database, you do get automatic backup. Now, if you do not do anything, right? Like, I have applications in production today that we just deployed, we do not do anything else. We leave it as is, and just the full backup. And our plan is, if something goes down, we will bring up another Azure SQL server in a different region and we will restore from the backup. But I told them that if you do that, it might take 12 hours and you might lose 1 hour of data, and our business partners are okay with it, so they don't want to spend any more money and they can rebuild their data set. So which is, if that works for them, that's absolutely fine. And but if that's not good, then you go to the next one, auto failover groups. If that's even not good, then you show them the active geo application. So this is something that you want to talk about before you implement and before you even design your solution. So automatic backup, as soon as you deploy your SQL database without doing anything, like on premises, we are used to setting up, SQL Server agent jobs, and there are other many solutions. You don't have to do anything, but one thing you want to know, that you lose precise control of your transaction log backup. What do I mean by that? On premises, we can set up transaction log backup at a precise time, like date, time, and second. Over there, we cannot. Why cannot we do that? Because we are not setting up these jobs. These are automatic. And if you go to Microsoft's documentation, it's clearly mentioned that it depends on your workload, right? And if you go further, you see that the differential backup happens every 12 to 24 hours, transaction log every 5 to 10 minutes. So you really do not have that precise control that you had on your on premises. You just want to be aware of that. So by default, as soon as you deploy, you get 7 days of point in time recovery, and I mean recovery capability, right? And except basic, tier, you can bump this up to 35 days, and I'll show you that. So, for many businesses, I know that you need some long-term retention backup. Just 35 days point in time will not be enough. In those cases, you can do up to 10 years of the long-term retention, and they're all geo-redundant, means they get copied to a secondary region for you automatically. You're doing anything. One thing you want to be aware, especially I know most of your folks are in Europe. I worked in a company many years ago that we had business in UK, and UK government. If you're working for UK government or any of their contract, they have restriction at that time. I don't know right currently, and that their data cannot cross the geographical border of United Kingdom. So in those cases, you want to be careful. If you do not have two region in your geographical boundary, you might want to shut this down. You might want to turn this off. So take a note. So the long-term retention backup, the way it works, that you can set up weekly backups and say, I want to keep my weekly backups for X number of years. Um, and then I can keep my monthly backups for X number of years. And what's a yearly backup, right? People get confused with this. This column is a yearly backup. What does this mean is that I can say that uh, one of my weekly backups, say like my fifth week backup, keep it for 10 years, or my 16th week of backup, keep it for X number of years. That's what weekly backups are. If I know I'm going too fast, if you have a question, please put in the chat, and the organizers will, the host, the moderator will let me know. Um, what can you do with the restore with those backups? You can restore point in time, you can geo restore. So if a whole region goes down, you can bring up another server, and then in a different region, and you can restore it from there. um, of course, you cannot restore on the same name, so you either have to delete the one first or rename it, and then you can restore. One thing you want to be very careful: if you delete your SQL Server instance, you all your point in time backups, means your full differential and transaction log that's you set for point in time restore, those get deleted. If you delete a database, they do not get deleted. So be careful when you are dropping a server. Keep that in mind, that you only have access to your long-term retention, not the point-in-time ones. Microsoft's documentation claim that they do these things. So test restore, DBC check DB, and checksum. If you're using managed instance, some of these are not being done on managed instance, so you want to check that out. You might want to, roll out your own. Uh, I get this question all the time. Can I restore those on premises? You cannot directly, but there are all these tools that you can explore if you want to bring your schema and your data from your Azure SQL database to your on-premises instance, but you cannot do a traditional backup restore. Built-in HDR. So I will demo you this in the interest of time. I'm not going to read any of this. But I'll tell you, as soon as you deploy Azure SQL database, you do get some built-in high availability and disaster recovery capability. And I put a link here. You can read more about this. In a basic standard general purpose, it takes a little bit more time, a little bit more few seconds to get reconnected than your premium and business critical. The reason is this: you have one copy of data and log files. So in case of a disaster, um, this is kind of a stateless um, uh, you know, status here, because this VM only has SSD and TempDB. You TempDB in SSD, so it will just bring your compute to another uh, VM where they have capacity, but it has to detach your data and log files and attach it back here. So it's a similar concept as what we know as failover cluster instance, right? In our on-premises world, but your backups are here and they're getting replicated. But if you're in premium and business, as I said, your data and log is actually attached to each of your VM, and they're getting continuously replicated. One of them is synchronous and the other side is asynchronous. So the failover is pretty quick. And these are, you're not paying for it. You're not setting up anything. These are by default. And hopefully I can, I can demo this if we get time. So, this happens very quick, and your application automatically get redirected to the newer VM, to the newer computer, to the newer primary. So I'm not going to read these points. You can download my slide, or I can send it to the organizers, and then it's in my GitHub repo. And then please get back to me with any questions. So this is built in uh, within a data center. So we get that. Okay. But what happens if the data center goes down, right? So there's something called zone redundancy. What you can do with this, so Microsoft in each region, you have this availability zones. And what does a availability zone mean? So what's the definition of it? It means that each availability zone has its own has its own cooling, has its own network, has its own power. So if one availability zone goes down, you will automatically get redirected to the another one and your business will be up and running. How is this designed? In your general purpose, it's still in, I put a asterisk in front of public preview because in some of the region it's still in public preview. Some of the region it's GM is generally available. So please, read the documentation. I can't remember it off my head. So if I need it, I go and look it up. This is disabled by default because in general purpose, this will cost you extra money. So you want to be careful. You have to have Gen 5 hardware, and you also want to check because you latency, because as soon as you turn this on, and it has to make sure that now it is replicating to other data centers, so within each zone. So you want to test that first if it can stand. But the concept is again same. In general purpose, it is, the data and log file is one copy, so it has to detach and attach. But if you go to your premium and business critical, you do not have to do that because you have multiple copies of your data and log files. Because uh, it's switched to synchronous replication, as so it's going to increase your latency. But even in premium and business critical, it doesn't cost you extra money, but it is disabled by default. So just so you know. So you have to test this first, make sure you are okay with your latency, then you want to turn it on permanently. Again, I have another slide just to remind you that if you turn on availability zone, as you see, your SLA increase. And if you go to this URL, you can read more about it. So you want to present this to your business partners, talk about it, decide on it, document it, and then you want to implement the solution. Don't implement the solution and go and tell them what's the RPO that they can accept. That's totally wrong way to do it. So the next one is active geo replication. So if some of you are working already in on premises, and if you're familiar with Windows Server Failover Cluster and always on availability group, is pretty much same concept. So it's replicating from one region to another region using the same technique that we use today in our always on availability group. And but this is at a database level, so just keep that in mind. This is not a group of database. You have to set this up for each database, right? And you get up to 4 secondaries in the same region or in multiple region, and you can use these secondaries as a read only. So I did not mention that. I should probably go back and mention that here. So some of these, right, at least automatically, right? If you are in a premium and business critical tier, you get 4 nodes. You can use the secondaries for your read traffic without paying any extra money. I should have mentioned it before. So I know that's not related to HADR, but you get that advantage anyway. So if you're paying for it, why not, right? You can offload some of your workload. Um, you have to manage your connection string in this case. But now, recently, not recently, I think about 6 months ago, Microsoft also came up with, you can have, sorry, I'm blanking the term. So you can have aliases pointing to Azure SQL database. If you set up alias, you should be good. Otherwise, if you are using the server name, when you fail over, fail back, you have to manage your connection string. So this is a synchronous replication, right? But you might have a transactions that's so critical that you definitely want it to write it to the secondary before you send the commit to the caller, right? So look up this store procedure. You can use it, but use it carefully. If you use it for every transaction, then you are really trying to force synchronous replication, and your latency is going to increase for sure. But if you here and there, if you have very critical transactions that you absolutely want to make sure that it makes to the secondary, you can take advantage of this. Now, on premises, we are used to availability groups. What does that mean? I can group a bunch of databases and I can fail them over, fail them back. together, right? And they're transactionally consistent. So what I showed you before with the Azure SQL database, a single database, you lose that capacity. And you might have an application that's dependent on multiple databases that you want to fail over together. So the community asked for this and Microsoft did respond. So they came up with this concept of auto failover groups. What you can do here, if you look at the picture now, I have more than one database. So I can set a group of database in a failover group and I can fail them over and fail them back. You also get two listeners. You get a listener for read write, you get a listener for read only. And the listeners will always move with the failover failback. So you really do not have to manage your connection string. Automatically, if you're using if you're using listeners in your connection string, it will automatically redirect you to the right node. Uh, you cannot have more than one secondary. So in case of geo-replication, we saw that we can get up to 4 secondaries. That is not possible here. You can just get one. And I did put okay, so these are the listeners that you get. As you see, there is no server name. So you use the failover group name, which is for read write. And if you say failover group name dot secondary, that's for your read-only traffic. There is a setting when you set up failover groups called grace period with data loss hours. Please, read this. I normally don't promote my blog during speaking, but I did had a bunch of conversation with the program managers to understand this better and should I, what kind of value I should use. And if you read that blog post, it will give you some clear ideas. So if you're using failover group, I highly recommend you to understand this setting before you implement that. I created this table just to give you a comparison. I'm not going to read this. If you are thinking about, should you use your application or auto failover group do use geo application behind the scene. So should you put auto failover groups, what kind of restriction, and what do you get, what you don't get. So there is some comparison here. You can read about that and then decide what you need. A lot of time I get this question, how do I know my application status? So you can use this. This is pretty much copy paste from books online. So I try to come up with a list that I've been talking about a few times already, but you should have discussion with your teams, right, or with your partners, or with your clients. Now, how do you spin up the discussion, or why do you start? So these are some of the things that I could think of, and I'm not saying this is exhaustive list. I'm sure there are other scenarios based on your business, based on the company that you are working on, what is their standard, what they want to do. But I think this will give you enough to think about what kind of questions you want to ask them. And if you can think of anyone that I missed, send it to me. I'll add it in this slide. So that's pretty much. I know I went very quick. I probably have another 25 minutes so I can show you some demo. And organizers can let me know because I definitely don't want to run on top of the next speaker.
No problem. You can, you have, let's say you have, I think half an hour is okay.
Okay.
You can stop at 40 minutes past the hour. Okay.
Okay, I might not need that because I kind of try to save the time during the presentation. So yeah,
Okay.
it's okay. I will I'll take whatever I need. I don't want to prolong this. So before all of you came online, I did run some code already to set up some stuff to save us some time. And what you see here is a notebook using a PowerShell kernel. And if you really do not know what's a notebook, please read about it. It's pretty cool stuff. There are a bunch of awesome presentation by communities and also by Microsoft employees. So you can look that up. So basically, I can write my comments, URLs, and I can also write my code. I can save the output and all that. So without going into details, so I put enough comments, should be okay. You should be able to follow this. So what I pretty much did, I set up a bunch of resources in Azure. So I'll show you in my portal. So the demo really starts here, but I do not. So I really want to show you what I did before. So with those code, I did set up 3 SQL Server and two
Taiob,
databases, right?
we still see your slides in this moment. We see the demo slide. So I think you have to
Okay,
switch the
I
screen
see.
or
No,
stop and share again.
yeah. Okay, so that will be a, I thought I shared the whole screen, but I don't know how this software works. So let me try that. Oh, it's per app. I see, because now I have three, so I cannot just pin it to a, oh, include no, desktop window.
You should see screen or all the apps. You can share a specific screen or a specific app. I
Uh,
suggest you to share the whole screen.
that's what I see, but I do not really, okay, hold on. So I did not go down. Okay, I see now. Okay, that's my bad. My bad. I didn't scroll
Okay.
down because my apps are on the top. Okay, now you should be able to see my
Yes, we
um,
see the Azure portal.
browser. Yeah, okay, sorry. So let me go back here. Uh, do you see my Azure Data Studio right now?
Exactly.
Okay, okay,
Yes.
thank you. So sorry about that. So I'm using Azure Data Studio. This is a notebook. It's a PowerShell kernel. So I did set up all this before you came online just to save time. And this code I already ran. So the demo is going to start here. Once you download, if you have any problem, please reach out to me if you have any problem with the setup, and I'll help you out. So what I did with that code is I created three SQL Server and two Azure SQL database, right? And I'll start the demo from here. So if we go here and all of these things that I'm doing right now, you can do it from the GUI, but I rarely do it. But I'll show you some stuff in GUI, so it's easy to consume. But I'll mostly use the PowerShell, and this is all AZ module, written by Microsoft, maintained by Microsoft. You can download it. It's open source. So the first one I talked about backup, right? So if we go to the portal and if we go to this database, I should probably go to the server level. Sorry. Yeah, backups. And if I go to retention, as I said, if you see this database, it has 7 days pointing time, right? By default. Now what I can do, I can say configure policies. I can slide it up to 35 days, right? As I said. But as you can see by default, I do not get any long-term retention, right? There is nothing here. So now if I go to my PowerShell, I can also extract that without going to the portal. I can see all from here. I can see that I do not have any long-term retention. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to set up long-term retention. I say my weekly is 12 weeks. My yearly retention is 5 years. So what do I mean by yearly retention, right? This is a confusing thing. It's saying week of year is 16, means every 16th weeks backup, keep it for 5 years, right? So let's run this. And this, okay. Now if we wait here and refresh, you see the long-term retention now. We have a weekly 12 and the keep week 16 for 5 years. So you can do that. And without going to the GUI, if you want to confirm it, you can run this command. You can see that now we have weekly, monthly 0, yearly is 5 year, week of the year is 16. If you want to remove it, you can use this command. Now I talked about built-in HADR, right? I said, there's some built-in configuration. So before I do that, I want to show you that in the portal, I have this database. I did not set up any replica, right? I do not have any geo replication going on. I do not have any failover groups or anything. And so I have the code here for general purpose. I also have the code for business critical. So I'm not going to run both. I'll just run the business critical one just to show you, you can run the general purpose. That's going to take a few more seconds. So I'm using a tool called Ostress. If you do not know, I put a URL here. Look it up. This is also a open source, free to download. You can do some stress test with it. So what you're going to do here, we're going to mimic that. We're going to run this select statement. It's going to keep running, and then we will use this command to do a failover. Now, this command is not designed for us to failover manually. It's just so you understand. This is only designed for test purpose. Like if we do a failover now, we cannot do it within another 15 minutes. So don't think that you need to do this manually. No, Microsoft do not want people to start failing over, failing back all over the place for the sake of doing it. Microsoft will take care of it automatically. I'm just using this just to show you that what is built in. So now let's start this. So now your application is running. Of here we are just doing a demo. So it's doing all this select statements and say they have a problem, and they will move you to a different VM. You are in business critical, so and you see how quickly we are back, and it's automatically redirected without you doing anything. And I did collect some stats here. So I'm in Boston. My service is in East US, about about 700 mile in Virginia area. It took 16 seconds, not to fail over actually. It's a lot quicker, but for me to get the acknowledgement on my terminal, it's about 16 seconds. I automatically get rerouted to a different to a different VM. And this is built in within the data center without you doing anything or you paying any extra money. So the next one, we're going to talk about geo replication, right? And let's show this in the portal again. Right now, as you can see here, I do not have any secondaries. So what I'm going to do, I have a primary server. I have this database here. I also have a secondary server, which is sitting in a different region. I will replicate this database to this server because that server is in West US and my primary 1004 is in East US. So while this is running, if we come here, and active geo replication is part database. So you have to be in the database pane, and if we go to replicas, you saw this before, we didn't had anything, right? Now you can see that we have a primary and a replica, which is a secondary in West US. Still seeding. Once the seeding is done, we'll do a failover. So here we have few pauses. If you have any question, please put in the chat. So the I can answer those. We'll have few minutes, few seconds of pause here and for these things to work.
No question for now.
Okay, thank you. Still sitting. Okay, so it's showing that we're done. Okay, it's caught up. So once this is caught up, so what we can do a failover. So what you will see that now the primary is in primary server 1004 will make this one primary, right? If we have a disaster in the East US, we are having connectivity issue or whatever. And so we'll run this. And we should see this roles should change. Pretty similar concept of what we do today on premises. I know we have options with auto failover or manual failover. Now you see here, my primary is in OSTUS. And we can also do a failback if we want to do. So the next I'm going to talk about is a failover group. So what's the difference we talked about before? A failover group is at a server level now. So remember the Geo application, you always go to the database, set it up from there. With a failover group, you start from your server because now you can bundle multiple database in a failover group, and then you can failover, failback together. So let's look at it in the portal first. As you can see, I do not have any failover group at this time, right? There's nothing there. I'm going to create a failover group, and I can have empty failover groups, same as we can have availability groups without any database, right? We can create our availability groups, create the listeners, and then we can start adding database. So we have the same concept here. So I'm creating the failover group right now, but I'll not have any database. As you can see, I have a failover group here, right? But if we go here, it's saying yeah, I have one database that's eligible, but I do not have any right now. And this was the setting that I was talking about, the grace period, 120 minutes. The minimum you can set this is a 60-minute, but you really want to understand what that setting will do for you. Because there's a huge, if you're a big shop, if you have like operations center that's running 24/7, you do not want to rely on this. But if you're a small shop, you do not monitor 24/7. You want to, leave some of this stuff on Microsoft's decision in case of a disaster. This is, you can take advantage of this setting. Okay, so now we have a failover group. So let's add a database now. So we're going to use the same database here, the one that we've been using. We're going to add this into the failover group. And you can, no, maybe it's too small. Now you see this change, right? Because we added the database. And if we click on this, there's a few things to note. My primary server, my grace period is 2 hours. This is my secondary server in OST US. And the other thing that I was talking about, that the endpoints, right? You automatically get this here. You do not have to create alias or anything. Now you can take this and put it in your connection string. For your read write, you can use this, and for your read only traffic this. And whenever you fail over and fail back, you do not have to manually do anything. This will automatically redirect you to the correct server. And we can fail over from here. We can delete this. We can add database. But as I said, most of the things that I can do from there, I normally do not do it from there. But so I'll show you that you can initiate a failover here. And if you have multiple databases, I know we have only one for the demo purpose, but if you have multiple databases in this, they will all fail over with this one command. You do not have to do it one by one. If we go here, there's not a refresh button here, so maybe I come back again. Yeah, it's changed. As you can see now, The primary is in West US and the secondary is in East US. And you can do one thing. You could take this just to prove a point. Connect. All right. And see that? So if you go to the portal, our secondary is now primary server 1004 in East US. So if you use this, it will automatically redirect you to there. Okay. So let's go back to the demo. There's also a command if you want to see your failover group and you want to see the details. You can do it, is this command. This is not doing anything, just give you all the details about your failover group. Now, I also talked about that if you are deploying in business critical or premium tier, you automatically get uh, secondaries that you can use for read traffic, right? I know that's not a HADR solution. It's more of a, you're getting more capacity for your workload. So I just want to show you that for a minute. So no, actually, let me go to the portal. So I have this server and this database that here, and if you go to compute and storage, you see that I deployed this in business critical, right? And I haven't set up anything with this. I do not have any other replicas or anything, right? So without doing anything now, if we go to that server, I do not have any additional properties, right? I connect to it. I can do read write. But if I now change my connection string or not change, I add this into my connection string without adding a second server or anything. Now look at this, is read only. So what it is doing behind the scene, as soon as I say my application intent is read only, it is going to redirect you to the secondaries. So if you're in business critical, you want to take advantage of that. So just keep that in mind because you are paying for it. So why not? And that's pretty much I have for demo. So I'm just going to go back to the slide for a minute. And I have all these URLs that you really can go and, step-by-step description, look at some commands and read more about the concepts that I talked about. You can download the slide and the code from here. It's in my GitHub repo. I can also put it in the chat if you want. And that's pretty much what I have. So these are my contacts. Again, I know we had a rough start, but again, I want to thank the organizers and the sponsors. And sorry about that. I probably have missed an email that I have to join with that email address. It's probably on me, not on the organizers. I just want to make it clear. I mean, I read all the emails. I had all my notes, but I'm not sure how I missed it. So I did join with the wrong my personal email that I was not supposed to. So it's definitely on me. And
Oh,
I want to thank everyone again.